Good evening. Now, this week's Parliament sessions have been filled with vigor and interest from both parliamentarians as well as the public. And of course, there have been quite a number of conversations and discussions in Parliament, from bills to the other things that have been tabled. Here on the spot, we're going to be discussing more of that. First off, I'm Joram Paul Sonko, and sitting in for Patrick Kamara, who is not with us this Thursday, and we hope he will be well to serve you again come next week. He's a little bit under the weather. So Patrick, our prayers are with you as you heal faster to get you back on the sport. Now, Tuesday, after a month-long recess, Parliament dredged in a debate of the 2025 UPDF amendment bill. It has been making headlines in our news bulletins, NTV Tonight and NTV Akaungezi. And of course, these two bills that have brought the political spectrum into life ahead of the 2026 general elections is the reason as to why we are here on the spot to discuss this and more other things that many of you who are part of this show this very evening are interested in. When you look into the fact that the opposition political parties, for example, are eyeing the spot for 2026, and so is the NRM, that is the ruling party. Welcome to the sport. You can join us and be part of this conversation using the hashtag NTV of the sport. But first off, allow me to introduce our guests this evening. One, I do have Honorable Ojara Mapenduzi, Member of Parliament, Badege, Laibi Division. A very good evening, Honorable. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Paul, and good evening, viewers.
I hope you're doing fine.
I'm good.
I hope Parliament is treating you well. Eh?
We are pushing on. We are doing well.
All right. And next to him, we do have the NRM's Women League Chairperson, Honorable Lydia Wanyoto. Thank you very much for joining us, Lydia. You're welcome.
Thank you for the invitation. Good evening to our listeners and viewers. I'm happy to be here.
And next to Lydia, we do have the Vice President of the Uganda Law Society, Anthony Asimwe. Thank you very much for joining us, Anthony. Good evening.
Good evening, Paul. Thank you for having me, and a good evening to you and the viewers out there.
All right. And I'm hoping that the Law Society is also treating you fairly well, 2025. And our last guest this very evening, we have Honorable Helen Nachimuli, who is a woman member of Parliament, Kalangala. Very good evening, Honorable. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Sonko, and thank you so much for inviting me for this very beautiful program. Never been here before,
okay,
but I'm honored to be here, and Kalangala is proud.
All right.
Yeah.
Indeed it is. And that said, on Tuesday, like I did mention, Parliament tabled the UPDF Amendment Bill 2025 after the Supreme Court had ruled 4 months ago that the court-martial trying civilians was illegal. And of course, we all remember that 31st day of January when the Supreme Judges, led by the Chief Justice, that is Alfonso Owinidolo, gave us that landmark ruling. Now, that mentioned, we need to understand, with this ruling and Parliament tabling, or the Ministry of Defense tabling this bill, I'll start with you, Asibwe. If you can define this in terms of the legal framework, does this defy the court ruling? Does it in any way defy the constitution of this country?
Well, what is clear and what was clear in the Supreme Court ruling was that a pronouncement that it was unconstitutional to try civilians in military courts. And that's what has been acceptable worldwide, globally. Now, we see a situation where the Parliament is trying to legislate in a way of bringing back what was cured through that Supreme Court ruling, trying to go by the recommendations of the recommendations of the court, and justifying, trying to bring a way of bringing back these civilians being tried in the military court martial and military courts. And as the Ugandan society believe it's improper, it's unconstitutional. When you look at the parameters that have been set, the Supreme Court, in trying to fit into the international standards, says that it's only under exceptional circumstances that a civilian should be tried in a military court. Now, internationally, the definition of exceptional circumstances has been clear. During the UN human rights, we have a clear definition where it is to the effect that it's only under situations where the civilian courts are not able, or the circumstances cannot allow having a person tried in a civilian court, that the person can be tried through military courts. Now, when you look at what Parliament is trying to do by defining or giving us exceptional circumstances, it is by far different from what is envisaged by international standards. Now, the circumstances where the state must justify is a situation, maybe you're at war and it is impossible to have a civil court, to have someone taken to a civil court. Now, here we have the legislature trying to justify by listing for us, defining for us what those circumstances are where someone should be tried in a military court, which is unconstitutional, and it's different from what has been envisaged, and it's against the law.
Okay. I want to bring in Honorable Lydia Wanyoto here in regards to the fact that she's coming in from the NRM party, where some members of parliament are pretty much pushing for this particular bill. I wonder though, from your side, the Law Society feels it does not bring out the entire picture of our law and how the law is being presented to the Ugandans.
I would like to start by saying it's not an NRM issue.
Okay.
This is a Ugandan
Thank you for the clarity.
It's a very important Ugandan piece of legislation, but also to let Councillor Simwe know that I think it's not fair for us to come here and begin immediately lambasting Parliament. This bill is hardly 2 days in the House. It has come from the executive. It has come from the executive, and it has just been referred to the Committee of Legal, Parliamentary Affairs, and I think jointly with the Defense and Internal Affairs.
Yes.
So where I see it is that I hope that, right, I would like to say that Parliament should have enough time that is given to bills under the rules of procedure, so that the Simwes of Uganda, actually is my boss, these radical my bosses, because I'm under them, they can have an opportunity to go and make presentations. Like any other bill, the contentious issue I think he has already highlighted is the issue of trying civilians. I think that the environment has created fear. We are dealing with issues of fear, to say if a civilian is brought before the court martial, will there be a fair hearing? But this is a conversation that can be different. Stakeholders can go before the Committee of Legal and make a case clause by clause, so that we can have a law that serves the interests and the spirit of the country. But to say that to ask whether or not Uganda needs a court martial, of course Uganda needs a court martial, and we need it. We've not been, the last 4 months you said, we haven't been having that court running, and that means that the Ministry of Defense or the executive was abiding by the Supreme Court ruling, so that they are able to realign what we have in the penal code. It's very important to discuss this bill alongside what is provided for under the penal code, what is also provided for under the, I think, the whole of Article 4, Chapter 4 of the Bill of Rights talks about rights, because everybody is talking about rights, but it is provided for in that it's a creature of our Constitution. And also the other acts, Simon knows about this, the other acts of Parliament, including the police, as any institution that is mandated by law to handle issues of ammunition, because we are discussing the mandate and management and control of ammunition or arms stores that are preserved of services, of security services, vis-a-vis the relationship with civilians. I think I've just summarized. So where does the civilian cross the line, and what happens to them when they cross the line? I think that's where the debate is, because the biggest fear is about a civilian in a court martial, but the question is, how did the civilian get there?
Okay.
So for me, I think that there should be a debate, unpack the penal code,
Okay.
where it's provided for, discuss that before the committee, look at the relationship between the army stores, the armors, ammunition that is a preserve of the forces, vis-a-vis it finding its way in the hands of the civilian. Then what happens? And if it happens, then how can we handle that? So this debate is very important, and I think that it's before Parliament. Where I came here today, I think they need more time, because some people have had time, but there are people who have not even read the ruling. The ruling you're talking about, the Supreme Court, it was not unanimously by all the judges. They had individual judgments, but they somehow concluded with the same decision. Okay. So people in Parliament, they commit these mapenduzes. They must read.
Okay.
They must take off time and read all the judgments, the judges' judgments, and at the end of the day, align with the bill, align with the penal code, and align with all the other acts, and look at what the SAGE is also providing for. But for me, whether we need a law that governs court martial is not an issue for debate. We do need it.
We do.
Yes.
I'm going to get back to you, and you answer to us why we do need
how
it.
far can you relate the civilians, and how far can,
because of some,
when they cross,
okay,
when they cross the line on the what we call the ammunition or army stores, that's when you can come in.
And Honorable Mapinduzi, I want to bring you in here. This comes just 4 months, close to 5, let's say, after the landmark ruling, and now Parliament is rethinking this bill. What is your take on that?
Well, first I'll start from where the president, the vice president.
Vice president.
The vice president.
No, it's now the president. You know, you do not allow vacuum.
Okay.
Well, you
he's
remember,
my president.
he's the
yes,
acting.
He's my boss.
You remember, and so
Randy, I don't know
follow
that I'm safe.
exactly what you say, because I think it's important that one, we get to appreciate that the steps being taken now, especially the step taken by the executive,
Okay.
and now coming to Parliament, is a step in the right direction. Why? Because the Constitutional Court made a ruling. But before I even talk about the ruling and this bill, you know, it's very interesting that most times people lose objectivity. When you look at this bill came to Parliament before the court ruling. But when the Supreme Court made a ruling, the executive felt the need to withdraw it, so that part of what was touched by the court could be added to this, so they don't need to keep on coming and coming and coming. So it was withdrawn. This is it's a big document. It's not a small, and it covers a lot of things. And I think this is coming from the direction that the UPDF Act was passed into law in 2005, and from that period to this day, a lot of things have changed, and so they felt the need to have an amendment. It's good. Now coming to the constitutional, the Supreme Court ruling and the bill. Number one, we need to appreciate that when the Supreme Court made a ruling, they pointed out several areas that they felt made the court martial not competent enough to handle cases and so on. And in doing so, they also pointed several of the areas that they felt needed to be addressed if the court martial should exist. And so the question then is, if you need the court-martial to exist, you need to follow and work in line with the decision of the Supreme Court. And so that is exactly what the executive took. And I think the executive needs to be commended. One, for respecting the decision of the Supreme Court. Two, for taking a step so that the gray areas, the gaps that have been pointed out can be corrected. And the question is, the bill we are talking about now, okay, does the bill respond to the areas that the Supreme Court talked about? The answer is yes. The Supreme Court ruled that the court-martial is not competent. They talked about qualifications. They talk about the composition. Okay. There are several things they talked about. And so it goes back to you as a parliament or you as the executive. If these are the gaps, what do? You have to rectify. And how do you rectify? You go back to the law. And so the step being taken is to follow the same process of the law and make sure that if the court-martial is to exist, it has to be in line with the requirement of the law and also in line with the ruling of the Supreme Court. So that should be the starting point. Now, it brings us to, and it's good that we're having this discussion now, because as members of parliament, we should be able to listen. We should be able to hear their views, but also we should be able to objectively look at this bill, because at the end of the day, every law that parliament makes is for the people of this country, Uganda. Mm-hmm. Leave alone talking about international standards and all that. Because the moment you begin to, we need to first talk about our country, our people. And I want to assume, and I'm not wrong, probably, mm-hmm, that the existence of the court-martial, first, is coming from the experiences of our history. And some of us who grew up in areas that have had serious, experiences, violent experiences, where people use arms and all that. And we have had a bad history. We have had armies that have, been in this country. You have read stories. You have also, read histories of how, previous, armies and so on have gone. So the establishment of the military court-martial plays a very critical role, especially in containing and making sure that the army as an institution has certain standards that they have to operate within. And this has nothing to do with political parties. It's about you, it's about me, it's about Uganda.
And, when you mention political parties, this is where I want to bring in Honorable Nachimoli very fast. Some of the comments...
I wish you could just give me 2 minutes before you bring her.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you very much. Hey, come on, relax. Colleague, we are colleagues, so we always do this in Parliament. Sometimes so we should take it easy. Some people think this law is probably to target somebody. And I think that is where we miss the point. And that is where people start the discussion. First, just as Honorable Lydia put it, have you read this? Because even when it talks about trying, exceptional cases where civilians are tried, they are clear. The details are the details are clearly put here. So the question is, if we are not comfortable with what is here, what is it that we are going to bring? Because it's a process. And so the discussion is important because it's not yet a law, it's a process of making a law. Okay. And so Ugandans need to believe that, one, it's in good faith, but two, it's also about our own safety and security. Because if I am to, let me just give you an example.
Because I want to hear the security element in the entire bill.
Yes, you are talking about trying civilian. I think it's around should be in this draft should be close 117. Yes, 117A. 117A 1 says, a person other than a member of the defense forces shall be subject to military law under the following exceptional circumstances. A, where the person voluntarily accompanies any unit or other element of the defense forces which is in active service in any place. Now the question should be, one, what is the definition or what is the interpretation? Should
of
be
that particular
yes,
clause.
exactly, and that is where members of parliament have to be very inquisitive, so that we put something that protects people,
Okay.
but also there is clarity in it. Then the second one, B, says, while serving with the defense forces under an engagement by which he or she has agreed to be subject to military. For example, let's say you're an engineer,
Okay.
and you're working, let's say, Nakasongola, where they're making, you know, ammunitions and so on, and you're not a soldier.
Okay.
And once you have agreed to work with them, what if bad people decide to take advantage of your work? So the idea is to create an environment where it is risky for anybody to abuse. And I think that should be the spirit.
All right, Honorable Mapinduzi, I was supposed to be bringing in Honorable Helen Nachimuli into this conversation, but I will start with her immediately after the break, because I need to pick her opinion on the comments from some members of parliament, especially those that subscribe to the opposition parties, who believe that this is going to be politicized in one way or the other, or to fight the opposition. Stick around with us. You're still watching NTV on the Spot. We'll be back. You're still watching NTV on the Sport, and of course this time around we're looking into the 2025 UPDF Amendment Bill. Is the 2025 UPDF Amendment Bill sidestepping the Supreme Court? You can be part of this conversation by sharing with us, of course, using the hashtag NTV on the Sport, as we're having this conversation now. Honorable Helen Nachimuli is the only person on the panel who is yet to say something to us. So I wonder, there are comments coming in from colleagues from the opposition who believe that by amending this bill or some clauses in the bill, it is targeting the opposition members of parliament, or majorly a political tool that will be used against the Ugandans in the near future. What's your take on that?
Thank you so much, Joram. Picking from what my colleagues have said, I gather it is very clear that, of course, it is targeting the opposition and some people that subscribe to the opposition. If I want to get back to what my colleague said, the Honorable Mapinduzi, he said that this law is not targeting somebody. The law does not target monkeys. Okay? When we are in parliament, we pass laws, and they are not targeting monkeys, they're targeting people. So they are definitely targeting certain people. And in this case, they're targeting the opposition. For me, that is what I think. And in what faith is this bill coming?
Okay.
In what faith has the UPDF amendment bill been brought to Parliament? Because if the Supreme Court did whatever it did, it played its part, and then you, the executive, you come and say, oh no, we are saying this, we want this to be done, and then you bring you bring whatever you have brought to Parliament for Parliament to do your dirty work. For me, I think we should respect the doctrine of separation of powers. You see? If the Supreme Court has made its ruling, we should not tamper with it. We should let it be. Why I think it is targeting the opposition, and it is actually targeting a few, it is benefiting a few. When we, for example, for me, I come from the National Unity Platform, and I'm proud I'm from the National Unity Platform. We have our you know, our combats that we wear. They are not military combats. We have our attires, we have our dressing code, we have the caps, we have whatever you may call it. But they have since been, you know, they have, the government thinks it is military attire, you know. Even when you have something like, I mean, it is red uniform, but they say it is military attire. So whatever they have listed, you see, they have even listed a pistol, that a pistol is a monopoly of the UPDF. But you know, there are people who have pistols. You know, the police has them. True. So it means the police has to ask for permission from the UPDF to ask to use pistols. We have to ask for permission from the UPDF to use certain knives in our homes. So for me, I think they're simply targeting certain people. I was even talking to somebody and they were telling me, for example, if a child is going to do an exam of chemistry, okay, and that the chemistry teacher is taking some chemicals, will they say this one is now going to mix chemicals and make a bomb? So they should be clear. Okay. If they want, if they don't want the opposition in Uganda, they should go back, sit down and say, we just want the ANRM to operate. We shall say it is well, because this is where it is leading. I am telling you, because
Lydia said it's not NRM, it is for the people, for me, and the UPDF.
In my opinion, she is wrong, because if you say the UPDF, the civilians should be tried in a court-martial, when the Constitution clearly states it shouldn't. And in the UPDF Act, it was quashed by what? By the Supreme Court. If it was quashed, who are we then, members of Parliament, to start now dilly-dallying? Let me tell you how it started in Parliament. The Honourable Mapendusi, I don't know if he attended, that day it was introduced. Okay. It was not even on the order paper. It wasn't. It was simply smuggled onto the order paper. Well, the Speaker has the discretion to change the order paper the way she wants or he wants, but it was smuggled onto the order paper. Mm-hmm. The minister in charge was not around. There was a junior minister, the Honourable, is it I've forgotten, the junior minister. So she stood up because the Speaker said, Minister, please come and speak to you. And she said, Madam Speaker, allow me invite my senior minister. And he was not around. Everybody feared to, to bring it out. And when the minister came, he rushed the paper onto her. And then she said, no, you read, please read it. There was some chaos in Parliament because everyone was scared to read it out to us. Okay. Now, when this gentleman comes, he reads it. I wonder why there is a rush with this amendment bill. Yeah? What is the rush for? It was brought in Parliament. The Speaker ordered the Parliamentary and the Legal Affairs Committee. She ordered the Defense Committee, a joint committee, to work on it. The next day, they invited all stakeholders. All stakeholders were invited to come and, explain how. Even the DPP said, I am not ready, I need to consult. Wait, I need to read through. The different parties, parties are supposed to read through.
Honorable Nachimali, quickly, I want to bring in Lydia here. Lydia, earlier you mentioned that it is for the good of the Ugandans. It is not
the principle of the law. The principle of any law.
Okay.
And as Simwe can emphasize this, it should be blind. And maybe I have to explain to Nachimali is that honorable. It does. Yes. When they say it's not targeting, but it's not about individuals. The laws are made for people, for the good of the community, for the welfare, but you do not target a one person in your mind. The laws are supposed to be blind. And that's why you've been saying, this minister, without mentioning names, brought this law and caught up with them. That's how the laws are supposed to be. If you mess up, it should catch up with you. So it should be blind. So the principle of the law must be blind. It should be made for the good of the people. It should be relevant to the times. And that's why I'm supporting the issue that there should be enough time for public hearing.
Okay.
Yes.
No, but
And let me tell our colleagues, give you information.
Okay.
The UPDF Act, the first act after the 1995 Constitution, was done in 2005. But these people who are saying opposition, that law was never made for the 2005, which opposition people were there for that law that was made for them. I think we should be very, very objective. And if you're in Parliament, I want to persuade you to have a lens of national character. Pass laws for Ugandans, because some of you only agree on a few things as leaders, but when it comes to other things, you want to cry.
It is for Ugandans, but
make your case for Uganda.
Jerome,
do not divert people and begin dividing us in terms of who is opposition, who is not. Because that law, let me tell you, Nachimuli,
no, I want
if tomorrow I am caught
I want to give her information.
Don't give me information because I've read the bill. If tomorrow I wake up in the morning with the army stores, it does not matter what color I am, I should be handled in accordance with the law. If I cross the band, I'm found with the grenades, with the ammunition, I should be handled in accordance. Pass the law for Uganda. Do not be subjective.
You wanted to pass some information.
You see, there is a reason as to why you called us here.
True.
Yeah, we came here with independent minds. We came here to
You came here with an opposition in mind.
I came
and I'm trying to persuade you to be national.
I am speaking. You
be
had
national.
Time. I came here because you invited me to this show. So I am not going to allow for anybody to tell me what to speak.
We are tired of opposition cries.
No.
And you are liars.
I will not allow anybody to tell me what to speak.
We will tell you.
You will not persuade us.
We want a Ugandan parliament. We want a national parliament.
My point is,
not pretenders.
Many a times in the parliament of Uganda, we have passed bills that have become, acts of parliament, and they've become law, and the president has assented to them. As we speak, for example, the Fisheries and Aquaculture Bill, or Act 2023, it was passed, signed by the president, but up to now, we do not have the regulations tabled in parliament. We don't have them. But now, this is where my question comes in. For a law that is not targeting, or that is not pro-people, they are rushing. What about this one that is pro-people? You have failed to, bring regulations for. So my issue was, we are rushing into this, yeah? There is a lot of panic. You have invited stakeholders to parliament. It has been called, actually it has come like on Tuesday. You invite stakeholders on Wednesday and you say, you only have today. The last is today. That is when you're going to come and submit. People have come and told you, we cannot submit on this because we need to read, we need to go through, we need to consult. And for you, you're saying, no, we need this and that. What is the rush for? Who is benefiting from this law? Who wants to benefit? Are the Ugandans benefiting from it? Or it is just a sect of people who are going to benefit from it? For me, my question is, why the rush? Why are they throwing it onto Ugandans very fast? And today, in Parliament, when I was going to Parliament today, I found roadblocks everywhere surrounding Parliament. I said, what is happening now? Is there another...
It did disturb traffic
It did a lot.
Today.
And when I go to Parliament, there was nothing going on. It was just actually a different committee sitting. So the tension caused around town alone speaks to what is happening.
All right, okay, let me bring in Anthony here. Anthony, yesterday, a bit, Honorable.
I just wanted to clarify something.
A bit.
Oh, thanks.
Let me first get to Anthony. Anthony, just yesterday, the Attorney General reiterated that the Supreme Court did not cancel out civilian trial in the court-martial, but rather advised with the framework under which this can work. I don't know from the perspective of the law and the legal books how this works, if you can interpret this for the viewer.
Right. Thank you very much, Paul. Before I get to that, I'll first speak to the aspect of the process.
Okay.
And everyone keeps, my colleague Lydia says there's need for time. She's asking why they rush. And just so you may know, we as Uganda Society are supposed to be consulted when these bills are being presented before Parliament. Yesterday at 11:50, I received a letter inviting me to 11:50 a.m.
Yesterday.
Inviting me to the committee for midday. That's 10 minutes to bring the views of Uganda Society and an opinion on this bill. It's 10 minutes to midday. That's when we are receiving the invitation. And I first thought it was maybe it had been delivered the day before, and the person who had brought it was still at office. So I rushed to consult the council members and realized, well, it's very unrealistic. It's impossible that you can come up with an opinion within the period of 10 minutes, and they want 30 copies.
For an entire
Actually, the letter
society
is saying that you should provide this opinion a day before, but the letter has come that day. So we did give I responded, told them we are grateful for the invitation. We're supposed to be doing this. It's our statutory obligation as Uganda Society under Section 3 of the ULS Act to advise government and any other internal matters touching the law. But for this, we are not able to appear. We still went ahead and gave our opinion, and that brings me to what you're talking about.
Yes.
The ruling,
the Attorney General
the Constitutional Court ruling, the Supreme Court ruling, which everyone was, celebrating. Now, whereas people refer to it as a landmark ruling, landmark judgment, which has saved the nation.
We were all glued
to that. From the point of view at Uganda Society, we felt the Supreme Court actually didn't help us much.
Okay.
Now, that's why I realized up to now, if I asked you a question, since we got that judgment, that ruling on the 31st of January, have you had any single person who has been released from prison, anyone who was undergoing trial in a military court?
Not yet.
No one. There are recommendations that were made, when you look at the orders in the decree, that the civilians should be transferred, these people should be transferred to civil courts. Have you heard of anyone who has been transferred? None. Have you had the DPP taking up any file? None. Now, when we looked at that, we took up this matter at the East African Court of Justice because we felt the Constitutional Court had missed out on several points.
Okay,
there are some areas that were skipped.
Which points are those?
And these are the points. The Constitutional Court the Supreme Court turned itself into an advisory body, kind of giving opinions. And when you look at the decree and the orders that were made, several of them, first of all, we had an issue with Section 117H, which was not tampered with, where when you look at the decree, the Supreme Court intentionally skipped that, where people who are, civilians who are found in possession, the Supreme Court never made a declaration. They are saying it's unconstitutional, but in the decree, it's not that it's left hanging. Now, there are other aspects where it turned out to give, opinions, and you're bringing these aspects of exceptional circumstances. So when we went to the East African Court of Justice, we did serve Attorney General with our reference. It is still pending in the East African Court of Justice. Attorney General has not responded. The 45 days within which to respond have passed. So what we told Parliament was, the advice is, you can discuss other matters, but anything to do with the trial of civilians in a military court, that would be against the rules of procedure. There are rules. Rule 75, you cannot discuss a matter that is pending in a court. That is sub judice.
Okay.
As well as Article 38 of the treaty creating the East African community. So that was advice. He said, do not touch that because you cannot begin discussing, even if it's in a way of legislating matters that are pending, because we want the East African Court of Justice, through that reference, to make declarations in respect of what the Supreme Court here did. So because it's pending legislation, as Parliament, you know, if you tamper with that, it is, you know, sub judice. So that's the kind of advice they would need to hear. That's why they need time. We nonetheless said, well, we're available to give advice. Now, when you look at what you said, what you asked about the Supreme Court ruling, the judgment, and what the Attorney General advised, those are some of the challenges we had with it. That is why we actually went to the East African Court of Justice. The Supreme Court gave, we call it nusu mukate. That is Kiswahili. Nusu mukate. Muganda would say, you can never, I've ever seen a judgment. You cannot go to court and you get a judgment that does not give you a remedy.
Okay.
No one can say, I'm enforcing this. Why didn't they just say, declare the trial of civilians in the, you know, military courts is unacceptable and it shouldn't happen again? No, everyone who is being tried there should leave. Then they also gave a retrospective aspect, saying it does not act retrospectively, meaning those people who have suffered through that process do not have any remedy. They should go home. We're also not comfortable with that. Now, before I again take leave, I need to give some kind of, you know, highlight and guideline that even as we legislate, we are governed, even Parliament, they are governed by the Constitution, which is the supreme law.
Yes.
Now, the biggest challenge we are getting, I'm not saying you do not need military, I don't want to call it courts. I want to refer to it as military tribunals, because they should have their purpose. It should have a purpose. When you look at the Constitution and the chapters, the defense and, you know, those aspects of security bodies and services, they're provided for under Article, you know, under Chapter 12. Now, Chapter 12, under that is where I think under Article 210, they even give Parliament powers to legislate on issues of discipline of military people or those are serving officers. Now, what is happening with this bill? They attempt to bring it under Chapter 8, to create it under Article 129 as a subordinate court, as a court of judicature, which is wrong. It cannot come under judiciary because there's a way in which judiciary, courts of judicature are created under Article 129.
And Honorable Mapinduzi, thank God you do have a copy of the bill here. I wonder though, I'll get back to you, Anthony. You wanted to comment on something to do with the tension that was around Parliament. But then on top of that, I wish to know, haven't the civilian courts been doing enough work already to have the civilians tried in the military court? So we need to know the clauses within the bill. Under what circumstances is a civilian going to be presented before the court-martial in case the bill is amended?
Well, I had requested you to give me just a few seconds to make some clarifications.
All right.
Interestingly, in this country, sometimes people can choose to lie, and they'll lie very competently. That's a little unfortunate because it's bad to lie. It's also bad to be diversionary.
But who is lying?
Let me just bring this. My sister here created an impression that is not very good by saying, one, that this bill was smuggled on the order paper. It's a lie.
It was.
You know, in Parliament, can I speak? Because I always respect people, I don't interrupt.
Speak, but it was smuggled in.
Thank you. In Parliament, we have a system that a member gets information, including documents, on your, it's put online. It's uploaded, you access it. And for every plenary, you get the order paper either 2 days before or a day before. And that's where I'm saying my sister is lying. And I can show you, it's here. All right? I get every order paper online. And when you look at this order paper, it's here. This was given 2 days before. And what she's talking about, that it was smuggled, is actually on order paper number 3, Bill's first reading, and that is Roman number 2, the Uganda People's Defense Forces Amendment Bill 2025. It's here on the order paper. Amended. Not amended. It's on the order paper.
I have it.
This was shared 2 days before.
Before it was presented to the House?
Before it was presented. And that's why I'm saying it's bad to lie. Number two, you know, you need to speak from an informed point of view, and that can only happen when you read. And I'm sure my sister's had the time to reading this draft bill. If you read, she talked about people owning pistols. The bill is very clear on owning pistols or whatever form of gun. And the provision is clear. You can own a pistol, but only if you are licensed to have it. If you have it illegally, the bill is clear. So it's important because there are many people who own pistols in this country. This bill is not criminalizing them, but it's saying you can only have it
if you have a license.
If you have a license. And that is important, okay? Now, she's talking about the monopoly component.
She talks about the monopoly of the UPDF.
Exactly. You know, again, the bill goes further to state what kind of arms, but does not limit you from having license. It's clear. So it's important that we read and we speak from that perspective. But I will not, you know, I cannot decide how somebody should speak, but I just needed to clarify that. Okay. Number two, it's also important that, you know, and I want to agree with the Vice President of the Uganda Law Society when he says that the Supreme Court should have done a lot more. Because to me, as a member of parliament, my question would be, is what we are doing in line with the law? Number two, is what we are doing in line with the ruling or the decision? And for me, I will never accept to go against the law. I will also not accept to go against the decision of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court made a ruling, and the ruling indicated clearly that the court-martial that time was not competent enough, and therefore decided that they should not continue existing. And they went ahead to point out where they fell, there were gaps. And so if the executive is coming to say, yes, we acknowledge they are not competent because there are aspects of qualification, there are aspects of composition, there are, you know, independence and tenure and so on, or even...
I need to know some of these clauses.
That is what is covered in this.
Honorable,
yes,
I need to know some of the clauses that clearly identify for the viewer that under this circumstance is when a Ugandan or a civilian will be tried in the military court.
And that is why I'm saying...
We wonder, we have civilian courts here. That's why many people
do you want
asking,
me to read?
Why, please.
Do you want me to
do.
read?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay. If you want me to read...
Just a few clauses that do target the exact...
I'll do that. I'll do that. So this is from clause 117. Okay? Okay, so I'm not sure which part exactly you want. It's a big document, but let me just try to narrow down to some of the areas you're talking about. You are talking about other persons subject to military law. You're talking about civilians in exceptional cases. I think that's the area you want me to read.
These are civilians, and
that's
quite
right.
a number of Ugandans are worried.
Okay, so it
what
says...
What will happen if I face the general court martial?
This is clause 117A, other persons subject to military law. 1, a person other than a member of the defense forces, I think I read this, other than a member of the defense forces shall be subject to military law under the following exceptional circumstances. A, where the person voluntarily accompanies any unit or other element of the defense forces which is in active service in any place. B, while serving with the defense forces under an engagement by which he or she has agreed to be subject to military law. C, where the person in unlawful possession, mark that, unlawful possession of arms, ammunition, or equipment ordinarily being the monopoly, where you are unlawfully in possession, okay, of the defense forces prescribed in Schedule 7A to this act, and the details are there. Now, let me take you to D. To D.
That would be the last.
Two more, just two more. D. Where the person aids or abets a person subject to military law in the commission of or conspires with a person subject to military law to commit the following offenses. 1. Murder, aggravated robbery, kidnap with intent to murder, treason, misprision of treason, or cattle rustling. E. Where the person without authority is found in possession of, sells or wears a uniform of the defense forces, and goes on.
Okay, and let me bring in Lydia here. Lydia, I want to pick your opinion again. What is your opinion on the entire bill? Is it a threat to democracy, or it is for the people and by the people?
This bill is before Parliament so that it gets enriched by public hearing, so it's a good piece of legislation for the interest of Ugandans. And if that's why, if we can have that mindset with the lenses, we shall have a good law in the interest of Uganda, for the street of Uganda, but also check and give mandate to the armed forces that have the mandate to uphold and have ammunition and coercive machinery, and draw the relationship between civilians and army stores. If we can agree on that one, we shall have a good law. But if you are going to enter Parliament with your own lenses, personal interests, fears, we must. And let me say this before you take away the time. You do not need a law, a good law, a bad law, to abuse office. I don't know whether I'm being understood.
You are. So in simple terms, whether there is a good law,
I want to request members of Parliament to go with a clear conscience and do their part, but also to remind them that bad leaders or people with a fear, they do not need a good law to do omission or commissions. They don't need. If somebody is bad, whether there is a good law or bad law, they can cause offenses, or they can do laws that are outrageous. So enter Parliament without fear, be firm, do what is due to you, and be on record. There is the book called Answered. Be on record.
Honorable.
Be on record. But I want to insist that we do not want to hear people. I don't want to mention names here.
Okay.
Lazy. They don't read. They don't read. They just lament. They're emotional, and they come to tell us lies. We are not going to accept.
Honorable Mapinduzi.
Because Uganda has decided that the job of a member of Parliament is a full-time.
Okay.
Read the Constitution, read the laws, read all the laws, by the way, that have to do with security.
All right.
And make your case. And leave the rest
Honorable Mapinduzi,
for posterity to judge
the current
you.
Parliament has come under scrutiny from various
This
critics.
speaking corridor talk we don't want to hear.
Many of the critics are saying the current Parliament is not serving the people as the former Parliament used to. They're saying that there's a lot of selfish interests. There's a lot of selfish bills being tabled, which are not benefiting Ugandans entirely. But of course, I love the fact that Lydia has mentioned that the law is not supposed to be good or bad. It's supposed to be there for the benefit of everybody. So let's
exactly that. Let them do their part.
Let's get into the Parliament scrutiny. Many people are saying there are lots of holes in the current Parliament. What is your take on that?
Well, one, this is the Parliament of Uganda.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
And therefore, Ugandans have a right to speak.
Because they voted
the
leaders.
Ugandans have a right to express their views, express how they feel, and we should respect. And so you're entitled to your opinion. You can have your scrutiny. I have to respect, because I serve you as a member of Parliament. I should be able to hear your thoughts and take it in good faith. But of course, we shouldn't take it that everything you think or say is correct. You can have your own opinion, and your opinion sometimes can be leaning to your own perception or your own biasness, but we still have to respect. I do not want to believe that this parliament is probably not serving the interests of Ugandans. Of course, if you are not satisfied with what parliament is doing, you have a right to complain, to express your opinion, and we have a duty to listen to you. And we should take it in that spirit. But I also know that there are people who deliberately deny Ugandans information. And they do that by either distorting information, just like what is happening now. People who have either refused to read or do not have time to read want to assume that they know, and you cannot talk about what is in the book if you have not read that.
Honorable, we're going to continue after the break. I want to pick Honorable Helen Nachimoli's comment on that, because we will be also discussing the Political Parties and Organizations Amendment Bill. That will be after the break. It is also a bill that is before the House, so do stick with us.
Has she read the bill?
The UPDF Amendment Bill 2025 is a conversation we are having here on NTV on the spot. But besides that, we are also going to be looking into the Political Parties and Organizations Amendment Bill, which is also before the House. So we shall discuss that and more. But as we turn the pages, Honorable Helen Nachimoli, the UPDF Amendment Bill 2025, I would like to pick your opinion on it. I asked Lydia, was it a threat to democracy? I will ask the same question to you. Is it a threat to democracy, or is it a threat to the opposition?
I would say it's a threat, of course, to democracy, because opposition is amongst democracy. The UPDF Act, or Amendment Act, you see, we have representatives of the UPDF in Parliament. I will also go there. We have the UPDF in Parliament. They are represented.
Yes, they are.
If the UPDF so wanted this amendment bill, they would move the motion. They would stand up and move. I know they are going to say, oh, blah, blah, but yes, they would come and second, actually. One would move, the other seconds. Okay, government has brought the motion on table. I didn't see any of them stand to say, you know, when that time when the speaker says the ayes, the voting time, the ayes have it and the nays. None of them stood up to second the motion. So it means they are also worried about it. By the way, some of these things we do because maybe we want to make somebody happy. Somebody, they have seen me seconding, but trust me, this bill, if this amendment goes through, it is going to affect even you who thinks you think you're above the law. It is going to affect them. You see, if we have the High Court, Article 139, you know, gives the High Court unlimited jurisdiction. Okay. If it so does, why do they have to create another court in the High Court, you know, formation? Why do they have to do so? Are we now going to have two High Courts? When the Supreme Court made a ruling, I thought it meant that there is where it said that every company, every entity has a disciplinary committee. It has where it takes, you know, their queries. Now, say for example, the military court would like Mr. Simwe said, I wouldn't even call it a court. All it has to do is to, you know, get onto queries of those serving officers. For example, this one did not salute me, yet I'm his boss. You go and take your query there. Why take a civilian there who doesn't even know what entails the UPDF? So for me, I think we should dwell on what matters, especially for the people and by the people. Whatever we want whatever bill, whatever amendment comes to Parliament, members of Parliament should do it in good faith for the people they lead. There is a clip I was watching where Mr. Museveni was saying about a certain law. When a law is being made, sometimes it is made and it hinders, say, the poor, the rich against the poor, the minority over the majority. And he said the NRM government is going to fight that. So what I am saying today, in this rush, it is the minority going to push down the majority. It is not pro-people. That is my thought. It is I am not going to allow somebody to put something in my head which I don't believe in. For me, I think it is not pro-people, and we members of Parliament should not allow this amendment.
Anthony, your final take on the amendment bill this evening.
All right, thank you. You had Lydia and Honorable mentioned that the first UPDF Act was passed actually in 2005. Now, if you go back to history, even in 2005, the moment that law was passed, Uganda Law Society, our predecessors went to court to challenge. What they were challenging was the fact that we had a scenario where there was a fusion between military, the military and the civilians.
Okay.
Now, our position as the Uganda Law Society has always been, and it still is, that civilian, military, authority and structures should be completely separate from civilian authority. And it is the civilian authority that needs to be respected. That's why we have what we call separation of powers. Now, when you look at this bill, the principles in that bill do not augur well with that aspect of the separation. There's some kind of fusion where they intend to connect the military structures with the civilian authority, yet military structures should be actually subordinate to civilian authority. So from a wider perspective, if the bill is left like that and it passed into law, definitely it is going to face the same backlash.
It did in 2005.
We'll still go back to court.
Okay.
We'll still get the necessary remedies. And again, going back to that same point, what is important is it doesn't matter whatever is provided for in the, in the bill, what it points at. The most important thing is if there's an aspect that is unconstitutional, because that is why you see we're not discussing other provisions, are we? There are so many provisions. It is a 150-page document.
Yes.
But we are all focusing on that aspect of the trial of civilians.
Civilians.
And now finally also to help or to guide my colleagues who are in Parliament, I know Honorable will go back to debate this bill. And he was reading for us the,
some of the clauses.
What you call exceptional circumstances.
Okay.
Now, it should be very clear, even for the parliamentarians who are going to be debating. I hope they'll be given enough time to debate this. And exceptional circumstances, as they are being highlighted in that bill, it is wrong. That is not how. It is not enough. We've had authorities, courts have determined this. The definition is very clear. The definition of what exceptional circumstances are is Parliament should not legislate on what exceptional circumstances are.
Okay.
And just be very specific, I'll give you that highlight. It's in the UN Human Rights Committee on, on general comment.
Okay.
That's in general comment number 32 of 2007, which is very clear on what amounts to exceptional circumstances. And it is that, what I explained earlier, that the state must demonstrate that this has come at a time where it is not possible to have a civilian court handle that matter. Again, you also need to know that most of these things, those offenses that are being read, we have laws that provide for them. We have the Firearms Act, we have the Penal Code Act, and these people can actually be tried in court and charged. You don't necessarily have to create a court where you're going to take civilians. So what is important is the autonomy and the fact that military structures should be subordinate to civilian authority.
All right. Thank you, Anthony. Lydia, in just 2 minutes, 2005, the act is up. 2006, we have elections. 2023, we have, 2025, sorry, we have a similar conversation or a similar debate. 2026 we have elections. Doesn't it kind of look a little political from your perspective? I would want to pick your...
No, but I think it's every case must be under its own merit.
Okay.
The UPDF amendment bill has been in Parliament for over 5 years. I first began looking for, we had an issue that required an instrument from the minister in the Ministry of Defense. Then we realized that actually there was already, the bill had gone to the first parliamentary council 4 years ago. So if you're talking about 4 or 5 years ago, how can you now begin bring parallels to the 2026 elections? So I think this is the mindset issue I'm talking about. Okay. Let's treat this matter in its own merit. Let members of parliament, I want to support the issue of time. That one I'm with them.
Okay. They need time.
Ideally, the rules talk about 45 days, but they can let them sit as a committee, schedule with stakeholders, and if they require more time, I think they should have that time. But that the bill should not be discussed because of general election, that is trash. Shouldn't think about it. So the bill must come, and actually we have frustrated the work of the UPDF because the court martial is not operational, and they need board of inquiries. They need a court martial to do their business. Do not cross the line.
To handle UPDF
civilians do not cross the line. If you want my advice, don't cross the line to where you're not supposed to be.
Let's head to Honorable Mapinduzi.
Let the debate go on.
Honorable Mapinduzi.
And let's not preempt the work of the parliament.
In a minute.
Just 2 days
before we switch to the other bill.
2 days.
Before we switch to the other bill.
Well,
your summation of our conversation.
It is good we have had this discussion, and I really want to appreciate the Vice President and Honorable Lydia. It is important that Parliament listens. We also need to give adequate time, and so these concerns are genuine. Fortunately, the processes are going on. The committees responsible are already having, discussions with different stakeholders. And so it's important that we need to allow the processes to go smoothly, get the views of different stakeholders, so that at the end of the day, we are able to enrich and have something that works for this country. And when we are doing that, should be in that spirit. Of course, sometimes we have fears. It is okay to have fears. But it is also important that we need to be very objective, because sometimes the fears we have will deny us from getting to understand, appreciate, and also add value. And so it's important that members of parliament across board give themselves adequate time to look at this.
To read and understand.
Yes, read, understand, but also make sure that the areas that we feel should be improved on, should actually be worked on. That's because the moment we avoid that, then we end up having a bad law. And for me, my emphasis would be my sister and any other person and every members of parliament should spend time to understand, but also make sure we do a good job.
And to your dear viewer, you should as well note that this very week we had other bills tabled or discussed in parliament. The other is the Political Parties and Organizations Amendment Bill. And of course, this particular one is also up for discussion. I have Honorable Mapinduzi, someone who seconded this particular bill. So we need to hear from him. What does this entail?
Unfortunately, I didn't second. Because, yes, the seconders are different. Why did you second?
Because you were meant to second.
If actually, unfortunately, I had a team, a delegation from the European Union that came to meet members of parliament from Acholi sub-region. So that was important because we were talking about issues, back at home. So I had to also, concentrate, and I informed the presiding officer. So I was not in the house, but if I had, if I'd attended, if I was in that time, I would have supported, and I'll just explain to you why.
Why?
The Political Parties and Organizations Amendment Bill 2025 is coming from. We need to look at the background. First, you need to understand how this law came into being. and why we are trying to amend the law now. This law came from, was tailored based on our own experiences. You are very much aware that in the 60s and 70s, the political environment that time was very hostile, and political parties mismanaged the processes, tribalizing, or even attaching politics, political parties to religion, to tribes and all that. It brought a lot of confusion, a lot of violence and bloodshed in this country. And so when Uganda returned to multipartyism in 2005, Parliament saw the need to come up with a piece of legislation that would help, one, deal with some of the bad experiences this country has had in as far as political parties are concerned. Because the question was, yes, now we have political parties, but how do we cure what happened in the 60s and 70s, where when you belong to the Democratic Party, or you belong to the UPC or the KY, you would have issues with someone else in the other party and all that. So the question was, how do we cure that so we don't have a repeat of what happened in the 60s and 70s? And Parliament passed that law, the political parties and organizations. And when you look at this, the idea was to have a framework that would regulate the formation, operation, and membership of political parties and organizations, all right? And this has a lot to do with how political parties, their supporters, and their members conduct themselves, all right, while maintaining peace and also respecting one another. So that's how this law came. And there are different provisions in this act, all right? But the amendment is coming because the question is, yes, you have a law. You have different structures that have been created. But how are these structures working? Are they working effectively? Are they working in line with the aspirations of this act? Or there are gaps? And so we have identified a gap. For example, this act, the Political Parties and Organizations Act, creates different organs, including IPOD, okay, including the consultative forum. And the political parties in this country who are guided by this law should respect the provision of this and operate within the confines of this law. And so the question is, are we achieving that? Are we dealing away with intolerance and extremisms and all that and so on? Okay. If we are not, how do we cure? Where do we have to improve in this law? So this amendment looks at that. Okay. It's about strengthening or looking at the areas that needs to be improved on so that political parties actually comply with the provision of this law. And if they don't comply, there should be penalties. All right,
Lydia, among the tough proposals set out in the amendment bill in these political parties is that if in these political parties and organizations amendment bill is that if political parties that do not subscribe to the National Consultative Forum and fail to engage in the dialogue under the Inter-Party Organization for Dialogue will not get government funding. Isn't government trying to coerce political parties, from their freedom?
Those are proposals. Let Parliament, that represent the highest level of political party voices, debate. But if you go to Parliament, they have a dress code. And if they say you cannot enter when you're not dressed in a full suit or formal dress, then you begin saying, why are you not, why are you being... You have called it tough.
Hey, why are you wearing short?
No, people should do, let them debate, but people should abide by the rules of regulations. Let me remind you, nobody is selling their tomatoes to fund political parties in Parliament. This is taxpayers' money. Okay. There must be accountability, and there must be rules of procedure on how political parties operate in Uganda. Okay. Especially if they are drawing taxpayers' money.
Honorable Helen Nachimuli here subscribes to the National Unity Platform Party, and then to some of the political watchers, it is political watchmen. The bill is automatically targeting NUP because it does not subscribe to iPod. In a story we've run today in the bulletin, your party says they will not be discouraged whatsoever with this bill. They will continue with their duties. I would like to pick your comment on this.
Firstly, the National Unity Platform is a member, the National Consultative Forum.
Okay.
Yes, it is. And actually, we deputize. Formerly, it was, the chairperson was the Right Honorable Hakana Rugonda for the, representing the NRM. And now it is, I think, Honorable Chiwanda Subi. Yeah, Godfrey Chiwanda, yes. And we were deputizing with the late Mama Jolly, yeah. And now it is Mr. Benjamin Katana, who is a deputy. So yes, we subscribe. Those who didn't know, we do. But again, we are not going to be forced into doing what we don't think is right. Okay? Some people think we are going to go and sit at a round table, have a cup of tea, have some donuts here and there, cakes, make discussions, and we think whatever we have discussed is going to be handled, and then as we walk out in the corridor, people are laughing at you and saying, that was just a casual talk. Of course, what we think we are going to discuss will not be handled. We are saying, free all political prisoners. Do not try civilians in the court-martial. These are some of the things we are demanding for. If you do them, hello, we shall sit and have that cup of coffee. But if you are going to stifle whatever activities we think we're going to do as a National Unity Platform, we shall not be forced, and we are not going to, we are not going to be threatened by anybody telling us to, if you don't do this, we shall not get you this money. I mean, members of parliament, Nachimoli Helen is a member of parliament for Kalangala who subscribes to the NUP. So I earn my party that amount of money annually. So, and it is, yes, it is envisaged in the iPod, whatever it is. But I am not going to be coerced into sitting in an arrangement that is not going to come out, positively for the NUP. So we are not going to allow to be forced. Those ones who are patronizing us, you NUP, you're supposed to do. No, we are not. And we are not going to allow to be, forced.
Okay. Anthony, looking at these bills being tabled by Parliament since a month-long recess, how significant are they to the development of the people from your perspective of the legal fraternity? And what is your comment on the tendency of Parliament piling a lot of bills and laws at the end of their terms? Because now we are only left with 1 year, January, February, election time.
Well, from my point of view, I think we need to question the efficiency and the practicability of some of these aspects and the mind really behind. We keep pushing for what we feel is constitutional. If, for example, you're talking about the political parties bill, and the main aim is to promote democracy. I know Uganda is a young, we're still young when it comes to democracy, but do we have that intention of allowing this democracy to grow? What is the intention? What is the purpose behind this bill? And have people been given a chance to contribute? Well, that same one is yet to be brought to our table. They usually write to us and ask for our opinion. We are given time to, to research and give our opinion as the Ugandan Society. We do give, our opinions whenever it comes up, but what should be important for these members of parliament while discussing these bills, it is the major principles, the constitutional principles behind those bills. Because when you look at history, I had Madam Nachimri talk of, some laws which have been passed targeting particular people, particular individuals, but historically, we know there are some laws which have been passed in such a way that they are targeting, you know, sections of people, and the same people are the ones who come back, those laws come back to haunt those people. So let's have good intentions, let's consult, let's allow to be guided, but most importantly, we respect the constitutional provisions. For that particular one, let's focus on the aspect of democracy, promotion of democracy in the country.
All right. Now, colleagues, we are out of time, so I'll be taking a minute as a final remark from each one of you. And I'll start with Lydia. Lydia, what would be your parting shot?
Next time you get on the floor of the house. This is enough.
Lydia, what would be your parting shot this evening on what we've been conversing about, the amendment bill of the UPDF and, of course, the proposed bill to regulate political parties?
Let's support Parliament to do their work.
Okay.
If they have full mandate, we elected them. They have the time. They have the rules of procedure. We support them to do their work. Okay. I just want to urge them to enter Parliament knowing that they are working for Uganda. They're not working for themselves or for their small pockets. The vehicles which they used to enter Parliament. The Parliament is colorless.
Okay.
And that's within the oath they take and also the rules of procedure. So we want to support them. We want to hear strong, firm, united voices passing laws for us and giving us hope. But when they come out here and they start lamenting like somebody else, now what do we do? Anthony, in a minute, what would be your parting shot to a viewer, to the Ugandans and to the law fraternity?
All right, thank you very much. As I conclude, I really call upon the members of Parliament, the people that are in charge, to ensure that they respect the values, the principles that should be followed while passing these laws. And for the UPDF amendment bill, let it be given time. Let's, if the point or the principles are to really have, you know, the way the army is controlled, let's not allow it subvert the civilian autonomy. And my advice would be that any provision in that bill that tends to point to subversion of civilian autonomy should be done away with, because at the end of the day, we shall go back where we're coming from and it will not achieve what it is supposed to achieve. Okay. Yeah.
Honorable Ojara Mapenduzi, a minute. I'm just hoping it will be a minute.
Well, again, as I said before, this discussion is very useful.
Okay.
Because it's part of the process of enriching the work we are doing. And so we have to, as members of Parliament, we have to commit ourselves to doing what Ugandans expect us to do. And we take the views and, you know, criticism and so on positively, because again, that is what we are supposed to do. And so I am very confident that we will continue doing our best as Parliament, but also where things are not right, we should respect Ugandans to express their views, and we take it positively. And that is what we are trying to do.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much for respecting my time. And Honorable Helen Nachimoli, a minute as we sum up.
For me, I think the executive should respect the other arms of government. And Parliament as an institution should not be vulgarized. It should be used to do the purposes it's supposed to serve. Then also, my appeal to all colleague members of Parliament, including this one who is here, the Honorable Mapenduzi, let us debate. Let us, if given ample time to debate, let us be serious. Let us pass laws that are pro-people, for the people, and not a certain sector of people. Let us do whatever we do for the good of this country. And finally, let us not allow for civilians to be tried in court-martial. Free all political prisoners. All
right. Thank you very much for that. And to you, our dear viewer, thank you very much for being part of NTV On The Spot this week. We shall surely do it better. And Indeed, way better next week, I should say. But my guests this evening, I've been having woman Member of Parliament for Kalangala, that's Honorable Helen Nachimuli. I've also been having Anthony Asimwe, the Vice President, Uganda Law Society. I've also been with your boss. Interesting. I've also had Honorable Ojara Mapenduzi, MP Badege Laibi Division. I hope I've pronounced Badege.
You have done well.
Interesting. And I've also had Lydia Wanyoto, Chairperson, NRM's Women's League. Some of them are radicals here. But to you, our dear viewer, have yourselves a good evening, a good night, till next week. This is NTV on the Sport.